So this week we have a matchup, Packers versus Raiders on Monday Night Football. The Packers sitting at 2-2. The Las Vegas Raiders currently sitting at 1-3. And for the Packers, this is a pretty big game just because they have a bye week after this game. If the Packers can go into that bye week 3-2, they have to be feeling pretty good about themselves after, starting 5 games with Jordan Love. If not, definitely some more things to fix. But I think looking at this matchup, this is a game where the Packers can right lots of different things. We've seen Jordan Love and this Packers offense struggle to get going quickly. Things haven't really gotten off to the best starts. Love had to come back against the Saints last week versus the Lions. It was too little, too late. The Packers offense couldn't really do anything against the Lions for the entire first half. And so this is a Raiders defense that is currently one of the worst in the league, 24th ranked scoring defense in the NFL. They're 13th when it comes to passing yards allowed per game, 26th when it comes to rushing yards allowed per game, and they allow 4.3 yards per carry, which is 18th in the NFL. And that's one thing the Packers have not been able to solidify so far this season, their running game. And that was one thing I think going into the year that many of us thought that would be the Packers' strength, sort of like their bread and butter, where they could rely on the run, rely on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and then Jordan Love could, sort of use that as a foundation, build off of that, and not have to really carry this offense. But so far, the Packers' rushing attack has not really been there at all. Right now, we're 30th in rush yards per game, 29th in rush yards per carry at 3.3. Of course, Aaron Jones has missed lots of time, injuring himself in the first game, coming back last week and playing limited snaps. But the Packers' run blocking has not really been great, and they have struggled to consistently run the ball on the ground, which puts even more of the load onto Jordan Love's shoulders because, when you don't have a running game and that's not working, it's much harder to pass when defenses know it's coming, especially when you're playing from behind and you're pretty one-dimensional. It's just much harder for the offense and the quarterback to get things done that way. So this is a Raiders defense that has consistently allowed people to run the ball, and I think this is a game where the Packers need to right that issue. Aaron Jones was limited last week. He played maybe 10 or 20 snaps, and I think this week we can sort of hopefully see that ramp up, and with Aaron Jones at full capacity, the Packers rushing attack should play much better. Another thing to note is that I feel like this Packers offense we haven't had all of our weapons healthy at once consistently, with Christian Watson coming back last week, playing a limited amount of snaps, missing the first few games, Aaron Jones being gone. And so with all these new young players and Jordan Love and this offensive line and the injuries, we just haven't really been able to get into a rhythm. And hopefully now with Christian Watson healthy, Aaron Jones healthy, that hopefully this offense and Jordan Love can start to get in that rhythm and really start to figure things out. Because Jordan Love and Christian Watson have barely, gotten those live game reps together. And so as that starts to occur more and more, and he continues to trust Christian Watson, this offense should get better and better. One of the biggest issues for the Packers last week against the Lions was the offensive line. I mean, the Lions were consistently pressuring Jordan Love all day long. He barely had any time to throw back there. I think that's one of the reasons the Packers struggled in such a big way. And right now it's looking like left guard Elgton Jenkins should be back. He's practiced the past 2 Packers practices, so that will be a big help to the Packers. Bakhtiari still, of course, on the IR. And then John Runyon, right guard, is currently dealing with an injury, didn't practice today. So there's still some injuries on the offensive line, but if we look at this Raiders pass rush, currently they're 30th in pressure rate in the NFL, so one of the worst when it comes to getting pressure. They do have Max Crosby, who is one of the best when it comes to getting pressure off of the edge, but outside of him, they don't have that much talent. And so I do think the offensive line should be able to hold up better, which should result in Jordan Love having a much better day. Because I think if you look at last game, it's hard for any quarterback to have success when your offensive line is breaking down time and time again. And so I do think the Packers offensive line should be able to hold up a little better this week, even though, containing Max Crosby and keeping him in check could be tough in this game. But all in all, I think this is a game where the Packers really need to get off to a fast start, sort of show that they can do that right away. They don't need to wait an entire half to start putting up points. And this is a very young offense, and I think this is a game where they have the opportunity to come in here and come away with a, feeling confident in themselves after this game. I think there's definitely a big opportunity, and I do feel like the Packers offense should be able to push the ball down the field this week with all these, different guys healthy and the offensive line hopefully holding up. Now moving to the other side of the ball, the biggest thing in this game, one of the biggest things, is the fact that Davante Adams will be facing off against the Packers for the first time since the Packers traded him to the Raiders basically, a year and a half ago or so for a first and second round pick. And the thing is, you're not going to contain Davante Adams. All of us Packers fans know just how elite he is of a route runner. And so far this season, even with Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell, he has still put up very, very good numbers. 397 yards in 4 games and 3 total touchdowns. So the Packers are going to try to contain Devontae, but we'll see. Do they put Jair? Do they let Jair follow Devontae? Do they not let Jair follow? That'll be interesting to watch, but I'm not expecting the Packers offense to shut down Devontae. He's just too good. He's going to get his yards, and they're going to be able to do that in some capacity. But still, all in all, this is a Raiders offense that has not been very good. 24th ranked scoring offense in the NFL, 15th most pass yards per game, 32nd in rush yards per game. And of course, Jimmy G, he missed last game with a concussion. He's still currently in the concussion protocol. And Aiden O'Connell played last week. Not very good. 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, was sacked 7 different times, also fumbled twice. And so I think the thing I'll be watching the most in this game is the Packers rushing and defense, because that was the biggest topic, one of the biggest topics after the loss last week to the Lions, who ran for over 200 yards, the second team to run for 200 yards against the Packers, with the Falcons also doing that a couple weeks prior. This has been a defense that for years and years just can't figure out how to stop the run. And Joe Barry this week, if you watch my other videos, was saying that it's not just one thing. They're going to try to figure out what the answer is. Matt LaFleur said it's insane to do the same thing again and again and expect to get a different result. So they're very much so focusing on the run game, and let's hope they can figure it out, especially considering this is the worst rushing attack in the NFL. If you look at yards per game, 32nd in the NFL. And they do have a talented back in Josh Jacobs, but so far this season, he's only averaging 2.7 yards per carry. And it's like something has to give in this game, because the Packers, one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL so far. The Raiders, one of the worst rushing offenses in the NFL so far. So maybe it evens out and the Raiders have a subpar day on the ground, because if you're the Raiders, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, this is the day we can finally get the running game going. If you're the Packers, you're probably thinking, well, this is the day we can finally get the running defense playing well. So something has to give, and I think the Packers will be able to, I would assume the Packers don't allow like a 200-yard rushing game, maybe more like 80 to 100 yards, somewhat average, where both teams says, okay, that's fine, not terrible, and hopefully we don't come out of this game saying, man, this rushing attack or defense is terrible, because if the Raiders just like control the game on the ground against this Packers defense, it's just going to show more and more the issues the Packers have here when it comes to stopping the run. I do think if you look at Jimmy G coming over from San Francisco, there's always been questions as to, was Jimmy G a solid quarterback? Was he just a product of Kyle Shanahan? I've always thought he's been a product of Kyle Shanahan, and so far, he's thrown 5 touchdowns, 6 interceptions so far this season. Hasn't really been very good this year. 709 passing yards. And so we still don't know who's going to play. Is it going to be Jimmy G? Is it going to be Aiden O'Connell? Right now, we don't know. And I think either way, the Packers should be able to force some turnovers, pick off some passes. Last week, O'Connell, as I said, threw 1 pick. Jimmy G this year, if he plays, he's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. And if we look at the Raiders and their offensive line, last week they allowed 7 sacks against the Steelers. And I think the weakest link, at least the past couple weeks on the Raiders defense, has been the right tackle, Jermaine, not sure you say his last name, Illuminor, something like that. But last week he allowed 3 different sacks. And so Rashawn Gary could be going up against him. And I think the Packers should be able to get some consistent pressure. And that is still one area where the Packers defense, I think, is pretty solid, is getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And so I think the Packers should be able to, get some sacks here in this game. So all in all, this feels to me like a game where the Packers come in here and win going into their bye week. I think coming off the bad loss to the Lions, the Packers, have a lot of reasons to come in here and try to fix lots of those issues. Obviously, the Raiders as well, struggling, losing their past 3 games. But I think that the Packers win this game 27-17. I just think that the Packers have a better overall team. I think the offense should get going. And so that is my prediction. But if you want to see more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below. But that's it for this one, and I'll see you guys next time.